Civil War began in 1861. With the newly formed Confederacy and Abraham Lincoln's inauguration, tensions started to rise in the northern and southern states. By the end of 1861, it had become clear that the Union was at risk.
Gentlemen of the Congress of the Confederate States of America, friends and fellow citizens, called to the difficult and responsible station of Chief Executive of the Provisional Government which you have instituted. I approach the discharge of your duties assigned to me with a humble distrust of my abilities, but with a sustaining confidence in the wisdom of those who are to guide and to aid me in the administration of public affairs, and an abiding faith in the untrue and patriotism of the people.
After several states seceded from the Union in 1860, the Confederate States of America were formed on February 9, 1861, with Jefferson Davis as president. Davis was a West Point graduate and a former U.S. Army officer who fought in the Mexican-American War. In the following month, on March 4, 1861, Abraham Lincoln became the 16th President of the United States of America.
In your hands, my dissatisfied fellow countrymen, and not in mine, is the momentous issue of civil war. The government will not assail you. You can have no conflict without being yourselves the aggressors. You can have no oath registered in heaven to destroy the government, while I shall have the most solemn one to preserve, protect, and defend it. I am loth to close. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic clouds of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone, all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union. When again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature.
And soon, on March 11, 1861, the Confederate Constitution was signed in Montgomery, Alabama. The Civil War began on April 12, 1861, after Confederate soldiers opened fire on Fort Sumter. Families were split apart as soldiers rushed to war. General Pierre Beauregard had dispatched aides to Fort Sumter in order to get Union Major Robert Anderson to surrender. The next day, Anderson surrendered the fort. 3 days after the attack on Fort Sumter, Lincoln issued a proclamation on April 15, 1861, that called for 75,000 militiamen and later summoned a special session of Congress for July 4th.
Now therefore, I, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, in virtue of the power in me vested by the Constitution and the laws, have thought fit to call forth, and hereby do call forth, the militia of the several states of the Union, to the aggregate number of 75,000, in order to suppress said combinations and to cause the laws to be duly executed. The details for this object will be immediately communicated to the state authorities through the War Department.
Lincoln eventually issued a proclamation of blockade on April 19, 1861, against southern ports, which limited the South's ability to stay well supplied during the war.
I can't believe this proclamation.
Do you really think the blockade will work?
I don't think it will. Our food supply has such a surplus.
We're counting on
Mr.
it.
President, how do you feel about the provision blockade issued by Abraham Lincoln?
The provision blockade is nothing. We shall have wheat, corn, and beef beyond all measure, along with tobacco, sugar, and rice.
Lincoln's blockade is a blessing in disguise. It will force France and England to a speedy recognition of the Confederacy.
3 months after the Battle of Fort Sumter and the beginning of the Civil War, the Union military still believed the Confederacy could easily be defeated. Many soldiers were confident in their strategy. Soldiers wrote home about their hopeful future victory.
Dear Laura, my beloved, today is July 16th and I am heading for Manassas. Do not worry, my love, for we have 10,000 more soldiers than they do, with their army of 20,000. General Aaron McDowell has reassured us that we will reach Manassas first. Tell the children I will hopefully come home soon. Love, Henry.
The first major battle of the Civil War began on July 21, 1861. The Confederates had settled at Henry House Hill while the Union Army crossed the Bull Run Stream. Beauregard's troops were able to shoot at the Confederates while being ideally hidden under General Thomas J. Jackson. This gave Jackson his famous nickname, Stonewall, and allowed the Confederates to win their first victory of the Civil War.
Dear Stratford, we've done it! Mark the date, July 21st, as the day they finally recognized our strength. At first, my friend, I thought all hope was lost, for McDowell's army, as we feared, had undoubtedly grown. But we're from Virginia. We know how it's done. Our blockade sent them running in a bloody mess. I'd say, call for celebration, Stratford. Your friend, Stephen.
When men went to war, wives and daughters were left behind, but that did not stop them from contributing in war efforts. In the northern states, women supplied the Union troops with everything they needed, from food to cash. Women also helped care for the sick and injured.
What is it?
We've received more supplies.
This isn't new. The Sanitary Commission has been giving supplies for a while now.
But so many men die every day.
But even with the help, so many men are being infected by the diseases. All we can do is give our limited assistance.
In early March of 1861, Lincoln began taking stock of the federal government's ability to wage war against the South. This would later contribute to Lincoln imposing the first federal income tax by signing the Revenue Act on August 5, 1861. By doing this, Lincoln and Congress agreed to impose a 3% tax on any annual incomes that were greater than $800. By the end of 1861, the United States of America had been transformed into a massive battlefield, with the Union and Confederacy at war. Outraged citizens fueled army efforts, and even women had found a way to contribute. After the shocking events at Fort Sumter and the Bull Run Stream, peace seemed almost unattainable, which meant the Civil War had just begun.